Do the Niners have the easiest path to the Super Bowl of any team in the playoffs?
And you would almost automatically want to give it to a team that has a bye in week 1. But these 7th seeds are so bad. They are so bad that when you look at the path, you look at what would come up next, assuming everything goes chalk, the 49ers would play the Vikings, who I think most people assume or think they're complete frauds. And you would look at either Dallas or Tampa going to Philadelphia. I think that's a harder matchup for Philly. If you go to the AFC side, they're going to have to play, Buffalo's going to have to play the Bengals. The Chargers are most likely the matchup for the Chiefs. I think those are much tougher matchups. Yeah, I do. I really think that the 49ers, it's set up very beautifully here for the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl. I think of all the top teams in both conferences, I do think they have the easiest path.
It's hard to argue they have an easier path than Philadelphia. Philadelphia gets a bye week and gets to stay at home.
Okay.
So that's good. I mean, that's helpful. Who would they have to play?
Well, let's assume everything goes chalk. They're either going to play Tampa or they're going to play Dallas.
Okay, so it could be easier. Still, though, I feel like they may be.
And then they got to play the 49ers. The 49ers are the team.
But the Niners have to play them, too. I mean, look,
that's true.
If the Niners end up going to Philly and losing, you could be like, well, Philly had the bye week and they had the home field advantage. And maybe if the Niners had just beaten freaking Chicago week 1 or Denver week 3, they would have played this game in Santa Clara. It is kind of crazy to think that like Dante Pettis is the reason the Niners are the 2 seed, not the 3 seed. Dante.
Yeah, that's pretty crappy to think about. So you've got Chicago, you've got Denver, and you've got the
Atlanta.
Falcons game. Those are the 3 that they're looking at going, if we could have just won one of these 3 that we should have, just one.
If they don't make it to the Super Bowl, we're going to be talking about how the Niners didn't take care of business early in the season. That's the main reason. Because, I mean, they might be better than Philly. But Philly has 2 distinct advantages if that game happens, which kind of tilts the scales in their favor. Now, maybe the Niners are just better.
And what else?
Home field and a bye.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you know what, though? I don't know if a bye is an advantage because I think you can go either way. I think in a situation where you've got first of all, Jalen Hurts hadn't played for like 3 weeks. He had to play just to win that game. He looked absolutely rusty. Now you're going to give him another 2 weeks off. I don't know. He might come out and look rusty and they might lose to Dallas. We might see Dallas or Tampa Bay in the NFC Championship. Like that's entirely possible. If Philly lost in round 2 to Tampa or Dallas, I wouldn't be overly shocked. If the 49ers lost to the Vikings, I'd be beside myself. There's no way that should happen.
Could I make an argument as to why the bye week is good?
Go ahead.
It's 1 week when no one gets hurt on your team. And I do think there's a reason why everyone wants a bye week. Now, I don't know if there's statistical evidence that says that having a bye week gives you a better chance of winning that week. I don't know. I'm sure there's lots of anecdotal evidence of teams that were rusty coming off a bye still. I feel like the Niners' path, I don't know. I mean, it could have been easier. They could have been the 1 seed. They wanted to be the 1 seed. They tried. They played their guys. They didn't get it because of Dante Pettis week 1, Jimmy Garoppolo stepping out of the back in the end zone week 3, and just a thorough shellacking by the Falcons week, whatever that was surprising to me. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's easy in the sense that they're really good, and it's the NFC. But so you can say they have the second easiest because in the AFC, that's a tough gauntlet over there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's 4 teams that are just brutal matchups. And even though the Chiefs have the bye, if let's say they have to play the Chargers and then either the Bengals or the Bills, come on, that's a really, really tough path to get through, and vice versa for those other teams. So, yeah, I think that, I don't know. I guess I could see maybe Philly having the easier path, but I just look at it and say Minnesota's a complete sham. They're a fraud. Seattle is a 10-point dog. I mean, other than injury, those games are like, okay, cool. We're going to walk through those and we're going to come to the NFC Championship.
Can we talk about Minnesota for a second?
Yeah.
Before we write them off entirely? Because there's a high chance the Niners face them next week.
Yep.
Okay. So I think it's hard to just write off Minnesota when the Niners made Jared Stidham and the Raiders look that good.
That's fair.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, Devontae Adams is great. Seeing him in person, oh my God, he's so good. But Justin Jefferson is as good. And Kirk Cousins is better than Stidham. So if the blueprint on the Niners is just chuck it deep and throw 50-50 balls against Diamador Lenore with your best wide receiver, well, they can do that. So that's the only thing. Like, if the Niners are going to be playing shootouts, maybe the Vikings have won those games this year, right?
That's true.
They have.
That's true.
So I wouldn't write out any given Sunday. Anyway, the Niners are the best team in the NFC. They should handle this.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What do you think? So if they're 10-point favorites this week, what would you put the betting line at next week? 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, assuming they play Minnesota. I would put it, I bet you it's probably at 6.5 points is my guess.
That sounds about right. I just can't get over what happened in Vegas. I was there.
That's true.
It was weird. I mean, that's the number one. I understand like the game didn't mean anything, but you're fighting for that one seed, and you're the number one defense, and you give up 500 yards and 34 points to the Raiders? Pardon? I don't understand how that happens. And last week was a great bounce back game, but it was David Blau and Trace McSorley. Like, that Vegas thing is still very fresh in my mind. It didn't happen that long ago, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Seattle on Saturday. Geno Smith is better than freaking Jared Stidham. What's going to happen? I know last time the Niners faced Seattle, they did a great job of putting Trevarius Ward on DK most of the game, and that really was great. So we know they're going to do that, but what is Seattle going to do differently? They've seen everyone wants to go deep on the Niners right now, so Seattle is going to try to do that. You know they are. How's that going to go? Lockett's pretty good.
Yeah, you're right about that. I think the thing with Minnesota though is that their defense is just atrocious. And so when you look at it, you say, okay, their offense is really good. I also look at that Raider game. It's interesting because we talked last week or the week before, when you have long winning streaks going into the playoffs, it doesn't bode well for teams. We went back to 2000. There were 6 teams that had done it. Only one team had won the Super Bowl. That was the 2003 Patriots. However, in this scenario, the Raiders just weren't good enough to beat the 49ers, but that was basically a loss. Like, that's one of those games where you just came out flat. You probably should have lost. If the Raiders were just a little bit better, it would have been a loss. And then you would have been like, okay, that's a loss that we had to have. Mm-hmm. Maybe we're not as good as we think. We got to tighten things up. I think they got the same outcome, but they are just so much better than these teams that they were able to still also get the win while feeling like they lost. And so I think that game in the long term actually gets them to batten down the hatches a little bit.